Hello everyone. In this video, I just want to take a quick look at how we can use Custos to identify which devices or nodes on our network are utilizing the most bandwidth, and actually which applications and protocols are represented in that bandwidth usage. This could be for the purposes of cracking down on bandwidth hogs so that we can make sure that our network bandwidth is reserved for more productive applications, or it could just be to get a better idea of what our most talkative devices are and actually what our most prevalent applications or protocols in use on the network are. So to get started, we'll log into Custos. I've already done that. I'm on the dashboard now. And let's go to the Services tab. Now the Services UI definitely gives us a lot of information, and there are multiple ways that we can use this. But in its most basic sense, this is really just giving us a quick overview of which devices on the network are generating the most traffic and actually which protocol or application does that traffic belong to. So before we go further, let's just do a quick overview of the UI. We can see here on the left, we have this calendar widget, and this is defining the time period that we're actually looking at when we look at this graph. So right now, this is Sunday the 25th as I'm recording this. We have a full 24-hour period highlighted here. However, at the time of this recording, this entire day has not passed and gone, so this is not a full 24 hours worth of data. If we were looking for our highest bandwidth users in the environment, then it would make sense that we would want to look at a much broader time frame anyway. So I'm going to highlight, say, the first of this month to right now, and this is going to update the graph. You'll see the graph got much larger. So now we have all of the devices and traffic from July 1st till this moment on the July 25th. Beyond that, we have a device drop down here. So all of our devices are along what I'll call the x-axis here. And how we want to view what those devices are is determined by this device drop down again. So looking at it now, we kind of have a combination of host name, or failing, if we don't have a host name for the network, then we basically have the MAC address shown here with the vendor ID represented in clear text. So then we can change this so that we can view these all simply by MAC addresses, or we can view them by IP address. And this is just useful for how you want to visualize the devices in your network when you're going through these exercises. I'm going to change it back to the device option. Next, we have what traffic are we actually looking at? So right now we're looking at both incoming and outgoing traffic. We can look at incoming only, we can look at outbound only, or we can actually look at all of our internal traffic, so just east to west traffic, no inbound or outbound. Again, I'm going to change it back to the incoming and outgoing for the purposes of this video. Finally, our last drop down is how do we want to visualize the amount of bandwidth or the amount of traffic that is represented in these bar graphs. So we have two options. We have bytes and packets. If I hover over this, you'll see that in bytes, we have just shy of 11,000 gigabytes of traffic represented in this bar graph. If I change this to packets, we have a just exceedingly large number of packets. Okay, back to bytes. Now let's get a little bit deeper into this. As I already said, along the x-axis here, we have all of the devices on the network, at least as for this time period from the 1st to the 25th. On the y-axis, we have all of the applications and protocols that Custos detects using its custom DPI engine. And then on the z-axis, we have these bar graphs, which visually represent the amount of traffic that is being consumed by this combination of device and service. In our view right now, it's clear that this one bar graph is vastly overshadowing all of the other protocols in use just by its sheer size. Again, almost 11,000 gigabytes of data for this month so far. Now, in network monitoring tools or visibility tools, we're all familiar with the idea of a top talker list. So this is maybe your top 5, top 10 devices on the network, just measured by bandwidth used. And perhaps we get a little bit more data than that. I mean, we might get some idea about, like, IP addresses, the conversations that are happening within that view. But where Custos is really different is that we can get a lot more interactive with this idea that, hey, this is the biggest bandwidth user on the network, and we can actually shape this data a little bit more to extract some more valuable information out of it beyond just Acronet backup, and Google is the by far largest bandwidth user on the network. So we take a closer look at this. What this is it's our backup system, and it is backing up over this Google service. All right, well, this is a pretty fundamental part of our environment. It's certainly something that we're going to know about and expect, and not something that we want to throttle in any way, because we're not just going to stop backing up data. Whatever this backup represents, we're just not going to stop doing that. So it's not terribly useful to note that it is the highest bandwidth user. We kind of could have anticipated this. So what I can do is I can actually either exclude the service or exclude the device from this view so that I can get a better view of the other devices and maybe applications, protocols that are not something that I would expect to see. In this case, I think I'm going to add this backup server to a device filter, because if I simply remove Google from the services list, that's going to remove it for all devices. And I don't really want to do that, but I'm aware of Acronet backup, and I'm aware that it is a huge bandwidth user, and it's not terribly relevant to me at this stage. So let's put that in a device filter, and it excludes it from this graph. Okay, now you can see that we suddenly have a much more interesting view here. A lot of these other bars, or these bar graphs, have popped into view, and relatively speaking, we have a little bit more of a dynamic picture of what's going on here. So next, the next largest user in bandwidth is Custos.local. Well, this is Custos itself, and just its various feeds, whether that's threat intel it's pulling down or data that it's sending out. And it's doing all of this over HTTP. Again, this is anticipated. This is a fundamental part of my network. I would expect to see this, and I'm not really too concerned about investigating it further, but it is overshadowing some of these other things that might be more interesting to me. So once more, I can add this to a device filter, and let's just take that away. I don't need to know that Custos is doing all of this, because it's kind of something that I'm already aware of. Okay. So you can see that the graph continues to sort of reshape itself as I do this. And what we have is one of the next biggest users of bandwidth is this VMware device and AWS. So actually, I know exactly what this is as well. This is data that I have in a test environment that's being output to an AWS instance. And this is the only AWS instance that I have in the environment. So this is something that, again, because I know exactly what this is, and it's not something that's really informative to me at this stage, I'm just going to add AWS to the service filter. As I said, it's the only instance of AWS running. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, so now what I'm left with once I've done all of that is I have a much more dynamic picture of maybe things that aren't actually knowns in the environment. So I can see that this Dell device, is the highest bandwidth user, and the majority of that traffic is, again, related to Google. Next highest is this desktop, and this desktop is, again, it's related to Google. In fact, Google by volume is some of the largest amount of traffic usage that I have on the environment. And this Dell desktop it would be number one on my list of top talkers, so to speak. But this is just a really simple way that we can start with our high bandwidth users using Custos' services display. And then we can do a little bit of filtering and shaping to get an interesting picture of what's going on our network while eliminating things that are expected or known to our environment. So I hope all of this was useful. I thank you for your time, and take care, everyone.